It is so important to learn how to get in tune with your body. Sometimes we just get carried away with life and we run through the motions. We put things on the back burner, and the next thing you know, days turn into weeks and that turns into years. We never know our own baseline because we can't comprehend these changes second by second. Only others can see those changes in us as they see lapses in time and how we have morphed since they saw us last. I challenge you to be mindful of what your norm is and what your baseline is. Try not to be a stranger to your own body. Don't you have folders in your office like important things for school, taxes, and work? Well, what about your health? Think about planning a wedding. It's one special day, and we spend a year or two with a planner, folders, a Pinterest board, and magazines. But when it comes down to our own health, we don't even make half that effort. So why is that? Well, it's time to change that mentality. I'm going over a few common signs that can be visible to us, whether it's internally like a headache or maybe bruising on our skin. These signs are your intelligent body's way of saying, hey, look at me. Your body is waving a red flag. First, we're going to talk about dry skin. Is your skin drier than usual? Are your lips chapped? These may be signs that you're not staying as hydrated as you need to be. Other signs to look for include constipation and darker urine. Not staying well hydrated could also include symptoms of fatigue and dizziness. Of course, many symptoms can overlap with other issues, but on a general level, checking your skin can give you a little idea about what your body may need. Sjogren's syndrome can also cause dryness in the mouth, throat, eyes, and skin. Hypothyroidism, psoriasis, dermatitis, eczema, and diabetes have also been linked to dry skin. Autoimmune disorders can also present with skin conditions. For an example, lupus has that pink butterfly rash that is across the cheek and nose. Mast cell disorders can also be something to look for when it comes to hives or redness. Bruising. Another sign to evaluate is bruised skin. Do you suddenly have more bruises than usual? This could indicate anemia or an iron deficiency. Anemia can also cause fatigue, headaches, palpitations, and dizziness. Bruising can be more present in those who have vitamin C deficiencies. Bleeding disorders, medication, alcohol abuse, or liver disease, and vitamin K deficiency may also be things to cross off the list if you can't correct easy bruising with diet and supplements. Palpitations. Palpitations are your body's way of telling you that something is off. Whether you are dealing with a lot of stress or you have a lot of lack of sleep or poor sleep, insomnia, possibly if you are dealing with stimulants such as coffee or nicotine, or maybe excess sugar, poor diet, which can also cause malnutrition or vitamin mineral deficiencies, or perhaps maybe you're not getting enough of something. Medication can also be something included in this list, as sometimes there are side effects. Another thing to think of are electrolyte imbalances, and as I mentioned earlier, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, which all can cause palpitations. There's also thyroid conditions to consider. So if you investigate all of these things, some of those you can kind of check off the list. For example, if you've been sleeping great, then maybe that's not the cause. Are you smoking a lot of cigarettes? Well, your body probably doesn't like that. Have you been so stressed out that you're just not eating that great lately? You might be low on something. Or a big one for most of us is staying hydrated. That can cause electrolyte imbalances, and being dehydrated can cause so many issues. So it's really important to remind yourself to stay hydrated. I know sometimes in the colder months, it's really easy to get dehydrated because when you're drinking water that's cold and you're already cold, you might not really want to. You might actually avoid that, or you just don't feel thirsty. People tend to feel more thirsty when it's the hotter times of month because drinking water cools you off, right? So it's really important to make sure that you're staying hydrated in the cooler months as well. So definitely try to ask yourself, am I drinking enough water? So palpitations are your body's way of saying, hey, look at me, something's going on. Of course, just as a reminder, always speak to your physician. These tips are just a starting point for you and your health advocacy to get to know and understand your body and the signals it sends, as well as understanding your body's baseline so that you can pick up when something's off. I definitely don't mean for this to replace any physician or professional medical advice. This is just to encourage you for self-advocacy. If you find yourself checking off all of these things on the list and something is still not right, then you know that you really need to get in and talk to your doctor. But if you can correct something like making sure you're hydrated and getting some rest, and maybe hopefully you'll feel a little bit better tomorrow. So our next topic is poop. This is a topic people tend to be shy about. So I'm just going to ask you, how is your poop? How are your bowel movements? Constipation could indicate that you're not getting hydrated enough. Again, with the hydration, when you lack a lot of water in your body, your poops can be hard and uncomfortable and cause constipation. This could indicate that you might need to adjust your diet as well. And the same goes for diarrhea, because a symptom of being dehydrated actually is diarrhea. And having diarrhea can actually make you dehydrated as well. So these are all things to keep an eye on. And it's also something to possibly make you question or evaluate what you are eating. We all understand that our gut issues may be due to a chronic illness. So what I'm specifically highlighting is if you see anything outside of your normal or your baseline, ask yourself what your body could be telling you. Sometimes an elimination diet can help determine if wheat, dairy, or other allergens are causing you troubles. Sometimes it's just a matter of cleaning up what you eat. Have you been eating a lot of sugary snacks, processed foods, dyes, and preservatives? Does that outweigh the balance of the healthy and fresh foods that you eat? Do you need to balance out that scale maybe? That's something to ask. I absolutely hate diet culture, so there's no need to complicate anything or follow the latest diet trend of the year. Just really finding balance and moderation and learning what your body thrives off of, and also learning what your body does not like so that you can avoid that. I know that sometimes sensitivities can manifest in different ways, and that's what takes people quite a long time sometimes to figure out those triggers and sensitivities, whether it's through their diet or not. For me personally, I learned that my headaches tend to come from something I ate. I realized it was preservatives and a lot of those type of additives that really trigger a headache, but they were so delayed, they take sometimes up to 6 to even 12 hours that it really took me a very long time to figure out. So, speaking of headaches, that goes on to our next topic. Headaches. Headaches are caused by a number of things, but finding out what type of headache you have and what triggers it is an important skill to have in your health management. Hormone fluctuations can cause headaches, as well as poor hydration, poor sleep quality, hunger, stress, medication, blood pressure issues. These are all things that can cause headaches. Sometimes a headache can be caused by ingredients that you may be sensitive to, which I was just explaining. Whether it is something you ate, or also it could be a fragrance that you smell. We don't really keep in mind oftentimes our environmental sensitivities and triggers that might be part of what causes us to feel the way we feel. So, again, maybe it's not something that you're eating, but maybe it is the detergent that you're wearing. Maybe it is the perfume that you put on every day or the lotion that's scented. That could be something that's causing that runny nose and that constant headache. So it's just something to look into. Vitamin deficiencies, such as vitamin B, can cause headaches and migraines. POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, is a common but yet under-recognized condition that can also cause headaches. What happens when you're having this episode is that when you go from sitting to standing, your blood pressure can drop and then your heart rate shoots up to try to compensate for that, to try to get the blood moving and circulating in your body. So that can cause symptoms of headache and nausea. Some people even feel like they're going to pass out. And that is something that could also be looked into as well if you're constantly getting headaches or have fatigue, or especially if you get really dizzy. That's something that I personally don't believe gets diagnosed enough, because a lot of times when we get our blood pressure and our heart rate taken at the doctor's office, we're sitting down. But what happens when you stand up, right? So finding the cause to your headache can help you to avoid these triggers and these situations or environmental stressors that might cause these headaches. If you still can't figure that out, then definitely follow up with your healthcare provider. Next, we're going to go into fatigue. Many of us in the chronic illness community are no strangers to fatigue. For many of us in the chronic illness community, fatigue is just part of our daily lives. However, it is important to understand your baseline in all of these categories, even pain and especially fatigue. Are you more fatigued than usual? If so, could that possibly point to low vitamin D or low iron levels? Now, a lot of times we feel that, for me personally, I live in the Sunshine State. I'm by a window right now, and I get plenty of light, and I make sure to make the time for that, especially right now in the winter. Well, you can have low vitamin D no matter where you live or how much sun that you get to absorb throughout the day. Low vitamin D can also be very common for those with celiac disease or with any type of gastrointestinal issue due to malabsorption. So just keep that in mind, that low vitamin D can cause a lot of these symptoms too. And I have noticed that a lot of doctors don't typically check those vitamin levels. So that's something you kind of have to push for or specifically ask for. Sometimes the rheumatologist will order it or your primary care. It really just depends. So fatigue can also indicate hypothyroidism. Your body is screaming that it is either overwhelmed or something it doesn't like, or it's lacking something it needs. So this is another thing to consider is, a sign of depression. And again, before you go that way and yell at me about this, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. But I know on a personal level, because of medical bias and being misdiagnosed and dismissed for so long, I used to never want to admit to having depression or anxiety because I didn't want my symptoms to get dismissed and blamed on that. So now that I have my official diagnosis, it's a lot easier to talk about that with my physicians, but I feel that it's something that should definitely be addressed in our community, and it should go hand in hand with chronic illness. I mean, we have to deal with grieving chronic illness. We have to deal with the stress of having to say no to things or just having a horrible day where we just can't get out of bed. So, it's okay to admit that we may be depressed, and it doesn't not validate your diagnosis. I just want to remind you of that. But it's something to check out, because if you find that you can't get out of bed and you just are so fatigued and just, not feeling like you want to do anything, it could not hurt to maybe ask yourself if you are depressed. And then that way, it's something that you can look into and take care of and see if anything can help give you that energy back. When you are depressed, getting out of bed feels like climbing Mount Everest. So it's definitely something that you want to keep an eye on, especially if you don't see a therapist, or if maybe you've never acknowledged that. It's something to look into, whether it's journaling, seeing a therapist. It's just something to keep an eye on. So fatigue can also include neurological issues, or it could be a side effect of a medication. It could also possibly indicate low blood pressure. When your blood pressure is very low, it's going to make you very fatigued. You're going to yawn a lot. You're not going to have very much energy. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. Fatigue is definitely something to investigate. And another thing I want to wrap up with is pain. Now, many of us in this chronic illness community, we deal with pain a lot. And here's the thing with pain. When you get so used to it and having pain every day becomes your baseline, it's really hard to, notice if there's any changes in that, because you just deal with it all the time. So something that I thought of recently, just my perspective had shifted. So I have been dealing with an issue, what I felt was recently, and I went to the doctor. I was dismissed. I went back several months later, and it only seemed like maybe a month or two, which, dealing with pain for that particular issue was not a big deal. It hadn't been that long. And then when I realized, looking at the calendar that day, it had actually been 4 months. And then I thought, wow, 4 months is a long time. And I was at the point where I was kind of starting to really accept it. And so now, as of next month, this issue will have been going on for a whole year of being in pain, or a new pain in my life. And it's crazy to me to look back and realize, wow, I have had that issue in my life for a year, but it just seems like it just becomes a part of your everyday and your norm. So it's really important to keep an eye on those things, which is why journaling is a great idea, because you can kind of flip back and look at your symptoms and say, oh, wow, this has been going on for way too long. So you want to definitely try not to put certain issues on the back burner, because they need to get taken care of. Because next thing you know, a whole year goes by, and then these little issues become something that's now chronic, which is considered chronic actually after 6 months. So when you get these chronic issues, these new issues, and they become part of your life, you really want to try to stay on top of those to see if you can somehow help them. Which, again, I know that it is very difficult for those who have these systemic disorders that just really affect your whole body, and it's just like hard to keep up with. So yeah, at the end of the day, a reminder that pain is another thing to keep an eye on and to not let that get out of hand. And so, of course, I want to finish by saying we have a lot of things that we discussed so far and things to look for. And like I said, many of us have these issues daily in our lives. So that being said, it's, again, just another reminder to make sure that you incorporate coping with this somewhere in your life, because you need to find some type of balance and you need to have some type of wellness. Whether, again, it's having a support system or talking to a therapist or journaling, any of those things to really just help keep your mental health in a healthy place. And keep an eye on that, because it's just as important as our physical health. So if your health is very poor, then, your mental health might likely be suffering too. So it's important to do whatever you can to try to make both of those better. And hopefully some of these things that I shared are little tips that maybe can help you to do that. So these tips are not to stress you out or to make you panic about everything that could go wrong. So just take a deep breath, and I'll take one with you. Let's do that right now. And exhale. All right. This is meant to guide you with education about your body. So like I said earlier, take notes, make a journal, document your health and your mood. You may not realize a pattern until you go back and you reread your health journal, whether it's weeks from now, months from now, or years from now. You might discover that stomach ache has lasted for months. And this might mean that you can finally be mindful and help yourself to advocate for your health. Because you don't need to fall through the cracks. You don't need to put yourself on the back burner and let these things go, because it's just what we do. So I do plan to release another episode similar to this to further discuss how to advocate for yourself, as that may be your next step once you decide something may be off with your body. So, like I said, if you drink water and you have a well-nourished meal and then you still feel like after some rest and all these little minor adjustments that you're still not feeling well, like I said, your next step might be that you have to see your physician and investigate with blood work or advocate for yourself and ask your doctor for these specific tests. And so I will make sure to get that podcast episode going for the next one coming up, so that you have a little bit of some guidelines and tips to help you with that. It is important to follow up with your healthcare provider. An example of this is last year I had my annual checkup, and I always check for lumps and I've never noticed any. So to my surprise, my doctor found one, and I couldn't believe how I could have missed that. When I made sure to check all the time, I felt like I was such a great advocate. I was doing my part, and fortunately, I had the biopsy and I went through all of that, and the lump was benign, which is great. But the reason I bring this up is because I was actually a couple months late on that appointment because, my year had come and gone, but my father just passed away, the pandemic just hit, and it kind of got to a point where I could have just kept pushing it off. I mean, the pandemic, it was crazy. I had every reason not to go. And then I think I went 4 months after that 1 year mark. And then I decided, okay, I shouldn't put this off. It's important. So this is my friendly reminder that if you have an annual checkup, whether it's with a neurologist or your general physician, then that's something to not put on the back burner. Do your annual checkup. Do that every 2-year checkup that you need to do. Have you done it? Stay on top of that, because those are ways where patients fall through the cracks. My hopes with this episode is that you may realize that you need to stay better hydrated and focus on getting better sleep. What does getting better sleep mean for you? It might mean that you need medication, or maybe you want to try cannabis, or maybe you just need better nighttime hygiene, whether it's, making a glass of tea. So if you think about it, in the morning, you have your morning routine, right? You wake up, you splash some water on your face, you brush your teeth, sometimes you brush your hair, you might change your clothes, some of you hop in the shower, or you have some coffee. I mean, we're going on and on right now about all of the things that make your morning routine. What about your nighttime routine? Most of us don't even have that. We just fall asleep while we're on our phone or during an episode of Friends, and hopefully you got the makeup off your face or brushed your teeth before you fell asleep, right? So what is your nighttime ritual? Maybe that's something that you need to establish, whether it's turning the TV off at a certain time, like I said, having that cup of hot tea, There's so many different things that you can try to kind of get you in the mood for night, just like you get in the mood for when you wake up, right? So these minor tweaks and adjustments may hopefully relieve some of these common symptoms or signs. Another thing is maybe getting the pain under control, or again with the sleep, changing your sleep routine. Our body and our minds need balance. We need rest, we need nutritious food, quality sleep, emotional support, and good hydration. Even if you are in tune with yourself, always keep regular appointments with your physician. Again, this guide is not meant to replace professional help, but just to inspire you to know your body and to help manage your health, because it's a lot. And you are the CEO of your body after all. Please be sure that you subscribe to the blog, which is bluedreamhealth.com, where you can find additional links and information on this episode. You can also check out the digital magazine on our website, as well as find us on Patreon, where you can be a supporter.